The Chicago Cubs hit a speed bump in Motown as the men in blue lose 2 out of 3 to the Detroit Tigers in a preview of this year's World Series. We'll give you our thoughts coming up. On the South Side, the White Sox failed to sweep the Kansas City Royals, but happy days are here again for the South Side Hitmen. Will the Sox continue to take another big step? We'll give you our thoughts coming up. In the NBA Finals, we are fit to be tied as OKC won Game 2 last night, but will the Indiana Pacers have to play without Tyrese Halliburton? And in the NHL Stanley Cup Finals, we are fit to be tied as well, as the Stanley Cup Final features the Florida Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers with two back-to-back dynamic finishes. That and a whole lot more. And we have a special anniversary edition of Old School TV Monday as you're listening to Second City Sports, the Monday Extravaganza, which starts right now. Welcome to this Monday Extravaganza edition of Second City Sports. You're locked and loaded, and we're live in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago, along with Miss LaKeena McGee, which is she. I am Sidney Brown. You know it's me. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter, X, and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You follow LaKeena McGee on the Twitter, X, and again, IG.
Be sure to download that Sports Zone Chicago app wherever you get your apps. Please follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms on Facebook, X, Instagram, and YouTube. Please subscribe to our podcast. We're located at War Media Podcast. That's WARR Media, PODCASTS. We are on all podcast platforms, including the iHeartRadio app. And while you're at it, please give War Media a follow at WARR Media on all social media platforms. And thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
We're going to unapologetically fun, and we have very definite opinions. If you have any definite opinion, do not 2-hour extravaganza we call a sports talk radio show. You can definitely hit us up at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in those questions and comments in the comment section. LaKeena will get the up on the screen for you. But if you decide to troll and or do something silly, dumb, or stupid, I've given LaKeena full powers to give you dumbos to be able to be a boot.
Toodles.
But before we begin, we must shout out our live game that's checking us live right now on our Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook and YouTube pages at 12:24 p.m. Central Standard Time. But much love to the replay game that's checking us out on the replay, also on our Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook and YouTube pages. Don't you ever forget our motto, where we talk about sports, music, or entertainment minus the politics. We will always provide.
We invite you some of the best here on Second City Sports. Of course, we'll talk NBA and Stanley Cup Final as both championship series head into Game 3 with the series tied. Also, we got Jeff Agrest, sports media columnist and deputy video editor from the Sun-Times, joins us to talk about some of the latest happenings in both the sports media, both locally and nationally. Of course, a special edition of Old School TV Monday. Can you guys guess what the topic is for this anniversary? We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that and so much more. But first, Sid, I know you want to talk about your experience, at the tailgating over at the Sox game yesterday. The White Sox did get 2 out of 3 from the Royals, so that was a nice. They've won 6 of their last 8. I know Sox fans want to latch on to something, but I feel for anybody. Look, let's not go from 0 to 100. Talking about they're going to be competing for a playoff spot, I should say. Let's not talk about that, but like I said, the Sox are now in the fun bad portion of the rebuild. So look, you guys like Chase Mondroff and Hector Caro and Tim Elko had a couple kind of hit yesterday to keep the Sox in it. But yeah, I think the whole thing with the Sox, look, they're 22-44. And they're off today. They start their series against Houston in Houston tomorrow, and it'll be interesting to see how that feels here. But yes, so go ahead and tell the folks about your experience.
First of all, shout out to the White Sox organization for celebrating the 21st birthday of Southpaw, the mascot. I know the kids love him. Some of the other White Sox fans love him too. It was a great tailgate yesterday. I know there was a party in the patio where the kids and the young families were located under right field. It was a party for him yesterday, but it was a big tailgate outside of in Lot B yesterday. I had a pleasure of attending that. Shout out to the Chicago Sports Bums. Shout out to Sox on 35th. And we know we have a couple of friends from that organization that we had on our show before, Manny Spagnola and Jordan Lisowski. He wasn't there yesterday talking about Jordan, but he's part of that great group as well. And they threw down a great tailgate. For those of you that missed it, you can go to my social media page at SidKid80 on X. You can check out the photos there, along with the Chicago Sports Ones and Sox on 35th for other photos as well. I know I did not get my Ray Durham bobblehead yesterday, but that was okay. But yours truly, if you can see right here, if you're watching live, obviously the Southpaw cup holder, the 21st birthday, and of course, flip it around on the other side. That's you can see it there, the Chicago Sports Bums, the Sox on 35th logo right there, celebrating Southpaw's birthday. And of course, even though yours truly doesn't drink, I got an honorary shot glass yesterday. I was hanging around my neck. It was like a broke rapper yesterday. I thought this was pretty cool if you could see it. So yours truly came out on top as far as other free items are concerned. Members of White Sox Twitter were there. Brooks Boyer, the vice president of marketing, was there. I had a chance to talk to him for a couple of minutes, along with other fans as well, regarding the CHSN situation, things all that. Like, I'll get into that more of that part later, but it was one big party that was had by all from White Sox Twitter and White Sox fans alike yesterday. Over 200 people were there. Both camera crews from CHSN and FanDuel Sports Kansas City were there. The Kansas City Royals mascot showed up as well, almost trying to ruin the celebration for Southpaw, but everything turned out well. The birthday cake, if you saw it on television or on social media, it looked awesome as well. So it was one good time had by all. Now, what you talking about on the field? The White Sox are with this infusion of talent coming up from the minor leagues. You mentioned about Tim Elko. I know you struck out with the bases loaded yesterday before the rain really came down hard, but he had another home run in this series. Miguel Vargas had another home run yesterday. Kyle Taylor, as you mentioned, came up on Friday. The crowd was electric. He had his first base hit. He threw out a runner as well. I'm not saying put him in the Hall of Fame, but you can see the talent from there. You can see this the starting pitching is really taking another turn as well. But the one thing I had concern about, especially yesterday being a bullpen session game, that bullpen still bothers me. LaKeena, I know they do not have a closer on the roster right now, but at some point you will hope that Chris Getz will address that issue at some point, because all the other areas looks like they're starting to take off. We start to see signs, but one thing the White Sox had to work on between now and the start of next season is that bullpen.
Yeah, that's really going to be the thing here if they want to take that next step. Now, it seems like, look, Burke had a nice outing, and I think that's really all you can ask for if you're a White Sox fan at this point. Divine intervention, aside or whatever, but I think, look, like I said, you're in the fun bad portion of the rebuild, so I think that's all you can ask for if you're a White Sox fan right now. Don't expect too much of this team when you don't need to. The only thing you need to just is just to have improvement, have everybody doing their thing. Burke had a nice outing. The bats have been really solid for the White Sox. We'll see if they can keep it up. That's really going to be the thing here. They're going to be facing a Houston squad that's still right there in the thick of it in the AL West, and this is going to be kind of thing. Also, Texas. Well, actually, they're going to be touring of Texas. They're going to be in Arlington this weekend against Texas. So they're going to be in the state of Texas for basically for most of this week. So the White Sox. Look, I think you kind of have to sort of like let's see how they do by the All-Star breaking. You can kind of Mike Tauchman has had a nice few weeks. Maybe you can trade him. Luis Robert Jr. actually looked okay in that series, so maybe you can probably, if he keeps it up, maybe you can get a top prospect for him. So that's really going to be the thing here if you're the White Sox right now.
And shout out to Adrian Hauser, who had another stellar outing for the White Sox last Saturday. I had the chance to be in attendance for that. Just like Shane Smith, who was a former Rule Draft 5 casualty. Easy to say that 5 times fast. Adrian Hauser has bounced around about 3 or 4 or 5 different teams in the course of his career. He was released by Milwaukee, the New York Mets, and a couple other teams. The White Sox picked him up, and he has looked stellar. Now, will he be the future of this White Sox starting rotation? I don't know. But as of right now, he's done a magnificent job. You mentioned about Sean Burke last week. Of course, Davis Martin had a stellar performance last Friday in that series opener against Kansas City, which contributed to the win. And mentioned by Shane Smith, in my opinion, should be the Lone Star representative at the All-Star game this year. Their starting rotation for the White Sox looks solid and is taking a turn. It's just that the bullpen has work to do. And you mentioned Luis Robert Jr. Hopefully his stats can improve enough where Chris Getz can get a little bit more come trade deadline time.
All right, we're gonna take a really quick break, and of course, we'll have more about the about the baseball. Of course, the Cubs was a tough one in Detroit against the Tigers, and also to a couple other teams. They're getting hot, others are not, and it's gonna be interesting to see what happens here now. The Yankees, Red Sox rivalry, another. Add another one to the gauntlet here. So we'll have that and a whole lot more. LaKeena, McGee, City Brown, Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. We got more baseball talk coming up right after this.
Welcome back.
Hey, it's your boy, the Superback, Sean Sierra, and be sure to follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms on Facebook, Instagram, and our Roku channel. You can find us at Sports Zone Chicago, and on Twitter, we are at Sports Zone Shy. Also, be sure to download our mobile app so you can take Sports Zone Chicago with you on the go.
Got it done here. Ouch! And we're gonna make sure you lit this time. Ouch! You're not gonna get me this time.
Sports.
Let's try an easy one.
Every day, we take steps to keep the people we love safe, but some health risks are easy to miss. Ticks hiding in the yard can spread germs, like the ones that cause Lyme disease. Mice searching for food can spread bacteria that makes us sick. Mosquitoes lay eggs in standing water and can spread West Nile virus and more. Cockroaches are drawn to water in the home, leaving behind allergens that can trigger asthma attacks. Common pests can threaten our health. Learn how to protect your family at pestworld.org.
Hey, this is Corey McGee, and I listen to Sean and Maya on the morning show.
Welcome back to Second City Sports with this Monday extravaganza edition. You're locked and loaded and real live in the living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid, that's LaKeena. You can follow your Shuli on the Twitter, X, and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You follow McGee on the Twitter, X, and IG.
As we talk Cubs and the rest of Major League Baseball, we'll add some Sox into it as well, just in case you joined us late. For this segment, you can hit us up at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in those questions or comments in the comment section. LaKeena will get the up on the screen for you.
On the flip side, though, for the Cubs, they lost a tough series in Detroit against the Tigers. It was very competitive, like we all thought that they would be. I know some people thought that would be a litmus test. I don't think it was. I mean, the Cubs lost a tough one, against Tariq Skubal, 3-1. They only had two hits from Skubal, and of course, also Saturday was a little bit of a different story. The bats helped the Cubs in that game, so that kind of say it had a couple of hits and hit two of the Cubs' 5 home runs in that Saturday game. Yesterday, it was a little tough go at it for the Cubs. I mean, Flaherty struck out 9 in 6 scoreless innings, and it was sort of, and also too was a quick trigger by the home plate umpire, but that's neither here nor there. Nico Horner and Craig Counsell got thrown out. Neither of them swore, so I don't know what that umpire's problem was, but I'm not worried about the Cubs. They lose two out of 3 to a team that's pretty much even with them. So, although I will say the Tigers get the better edge in the pitching, but so what do you think about this series?
As we said on Friday, I thought Detroit's manager AJ Hinch lined up his starting pitchers perfectly for this series. Remember, Tariq Skubal was supposed to pitch last Thursday in Chicago against the White Sox. That didn't happen. He thought that this series against the Cubs was more important. Damn it, he was right. We told you that too. And look what happened. He pitched a stellar general performance last Friday to help the Detroit Tigers beat the Cubs 3-1. Now, for that game, if it wasn't for Pico Armstrong, Gaffer, which you had to blame the third base coach, by the way. If it wasn't for that, maybe the Cubs would have snuck out of there with that one, taking 2 out of 3 instead of losing 2 out of 3. But that's baseball. But as you mentioned, the offense exploded early that next day, thanks to Seiya Suzuki and Jack Flaherty. As you mentioned, he's been kind of up and down for the Detroit Tigers, but still one of the best pitchers in baseball when healthy. He performed like yesterday, as you mentioned, with those 9 strikeouts through 6 innings. On the flip side, yesterday, Cade Horton, even though he had 6 strikeouts through 5 innings, strikeouts through 5 innings, he gave us 7 hits, 4 earned runs, and a couple walks. This is the first time ever since he's been called up that he's really got knocked around like this. So hopefully he can take this in good stride, learn from it, and move on, just like we said about Ben Brown for the last couple of weeks. So you can't really blame Cade Horton. Yes, he got knocked around. He's a rookie. He's going to learn, but the offense just went flat yesterday. As the old saying goes in baseball, most of the times, great pitching always will be great hitting.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing here. And I think if anything, this shows the Cubs that maybe they need to beef up that starting pitching, especially since we don't know how long Shota is going to be back. He might come back by the end of this month, but who knows at this point. But yeah, I think the Cubs they hung in there with the Tigers. Look, would have been nice if it had not been for that from that gag by that third base coach. Maybe they could have snuck in and won on Friday, but it is what it is with that. But yeah, I think with the Cubs, when they won, they lose 2 out of 3. I don't really think too worried about that at this point. Now they do face a Phillies team that's been struggling lately. They're getting them at the right time. Also, Bryce Harper is going to be out for this series, so we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, I think if you're the Cubs, I think you should be feeling pretty good. You still got the best record in the National League, and I think you're because like I said, you're gonna be facing a Phillies squad that's been in kind of a free for all lately. So overall, yeah, not a great weekend for the Cubs, but I guess you can take this all in stride and just say, okay, you know what? We hung in there against one of the top teams in the AL, and look, we're still 4 games up, so like the Cardinals didn't have a good weekend either. So all in all, okay, things are okay.
Yeah, for the Cubs, even though you collected a total of 4 hits yesterday, a couple of signs that you're starting to see that are still keeping this team afloat offensively. Dansby Swanson collected 2 of those 4 hits yesterday. The other one belonged to Pico Armstrong. I still say that he's in the top 3 as far as MVP is concerned. I know that Freddie Freeman's going to have to say something about that. Maybe Mookie Betts, both of them from the Dodgers. Perhaps Francisco Lindor from the New York Mets will have something to say about it as well. But Pico Armstrong is up there, in my opinion, as a top 3, top 4 candidate for NL MVP. And Dansby Swanson, as I mentioned on the show the last couple of weeks, he's been picking it up with his bat ever since the last week in April. So hitting over 300. So we talked about his struggles last year. I know he said he was struggling with injuries that people didn't know about last year, but so far in 2025, he's picked it up, and that's really going to help this Cubs team offensively a long ways to go. Help this Cubs offense in the long run.
Yeah, Matthew Boyd will face Zach Wheeler, so we'll see if they can, tonight. So we'll see if they can get it going there against Philadelphia. It'll be Colin Ray versus Mick Abel tomorrow. And for the rubber match, you got Ben Brown versus Jesus Luzardo. So. Like I said, you're catching the Phillies at the right time. So like I said, and we know Bryce Harper is going to be out for this series. Phillies have lost 5 in a row, including getting swept by the Pirates of all people. So maybe like I said, they've been not been hitting the ball very well. So we'll see. Maybe they can power their way through here, and perhaps maybe win 2 out of 3 in this Phillies series.
Yeah, it's going to be very important for the Cubs to jump all over the Phillies. You mentioned with Bryce Harper being out. Let's be honest here too, LaKeena. Not the Pirates, but the Phillies bullpen has been in flux all year long. We talk about the suspension to that closer, Jose Alvarado. He's gone for the year. He's not going to come back for the playoffs. So if the Cubs can get to that Phillies bullpen, that's definitely going to work in the Cubs' favor. And with the Cubs hitting for power, and it looks like they're starting to do the hit and run for speed as well. This is a very dangerous team. Well, with all cylinders a go. So I think the Cubs realistically, I will put the pressure for them to sweep, but realistically, I think they should take 2 out of 3.
All right, this is Second City Sports on Sports Chicago. LaKeena, McGee, Sidney Brown with you. Say anything else before we go to the rest of MLB?
I want to give the pitching matchups for the Sox series against the Houston Astros. They will start tomorrow. It'll be Shane Smith taking the bump for the Southsiders. He'll go up against Lance McCullers Jr. And, of course, Wednesday's matchup, you'll have Sean Burke versus Ryan Gusto. And then for Thursday, if I could get it up here real quick, as I'll wrap up the 3-game series from Houston before traveling to take on the Rangers on Friday. The pitching matchup for the series finale will be Davis Martin versus Fernando Valdez. So the pitching matchups looks in favor on paper for the Houston Astros, but I think the White Sox should at least take 1 game. Maybe they can sneak in 2, but realistically, I think they'll take 1 game, at least 1 game in this series.
All right, so let's get to the rest of Major League Baseball. I guess we'll do the Yankees Red Sox series and get that out of the way. I guess the other Yankees did win the opener 9-6 but then after that they gave up 10 and 11 runs respectively. They're pitching as they lose both of those games to the Red Sox. The Red Sox, they hit 5 home runs. Of course, Aaron Judge had 2. He actually ended up having a good series. He hit 2 home runs yesterday, but it wasn't enough for them. Trevor Story had 5 RBIs. Crouch had a nice one there on Saturday. So yeah, it's gonna. Yeah, so I know Yankees fans are a little miffed about this. Of course, when you lose to your series to the Red Sox, it's always something to to worry about. But considering what the Red Sox have gone through, I think they need this. They need this series more than the Yankees did.
Yeah, especially playing without Alex Bregman, who's on the injury list right now. They need all their players to step up, like their rookie Campbell. Of course, Rafael Devers kissed my bat. He had that monstrous home run to basically put it away last night in the 9th inning, and also too, their pitching. Talking about Red Sox pitching, it got dinged up a little bit last night, but it improved last Saturday in their first win of this series. It didn't happen on Friday, but the starting pitcher for the Red Sox was good enough to hold down the Yankees, taking 2 out of 3 there. As you mentioned, with the injuries going on with the Red Sox, that series is more important to them than for the Yankees. If you're a Yankees fan, of course you don't want to lose to your bitter rival, but if you're the Yankees, you can. You're okay. Obviously, you're not happy, but you're okay. I know Carlos Rodon got knocked around a little bit last night, but you're still okay. Boston still has to climb out of the cellar. They still, I believe, 5 games under 500, even though they took 2 out of 3 from the Yankees in the Bronx.
Right. Yes, they did. So we just see what happens. And for that one, let's see here. Staying. Okay, let's talk about let's stay in the AL East here as the Rays took care of business against the Marlins. They went in 2 out of 3 in that series. Toronto lost a tough yesterday to Minnesota, but they did win that series 2 out of 3 there. So they're playing very well at this point in the season. Baltimore, you thought that maybe Baltimore, maybe after sweeping the Mariners early last week, they ended up losing 2 out of 3 against the A's. So I guess
go figure.
I guess you thought that maybe Baltimore's starting to figure things out. Then this happened. So
yeah, bad starting pitching once again, costly errors, and when you give any team extra outs, this is what happens. So that's what happened to Baltimore against, as we call them, the Oakland A's of Sacramento on this show. I want to stay in the American League, LaKeena, but go to the AL West. The LA Angels took 2 out of 3 at home against your Seattle Mariners, but your guy George Kirby staved off the sweep yesterday. He had a career high 14 strikeouts as the Mariners, as I mentioned, eke out a win in that series finale 3-2.
Yeah, so they really needed that. So yeah, I'm not too worried about that in that part. Now going to the AL Central, we talked about Minnesota. They did win 2 out of 3 against Toronto at home. So we'll see if maybe I know you're not sold on Minnesota, but yeah, I think at least right now Minnesota looks like they're still hanging in there. Cleveland has kind of gone down a little bit. They lose 2 out of 3 to Houston, and I'm a little concerned about the Guardians at this point because it's getting a little bit dicey down in Cleveland.
Yeah, like I said, the offense has been struggling. I know the pitching has been average at best. And as I said before, when they had that hot start to the season, I said, I don't know. We'll see what happens around this time. I think you're starting to see the real Cleveland Guardians now. They're still going to scrap and fight and claw. But we had teams like Kansas City, even though they lost 2 out of 3 on the south side this past weekend. But you still have Kansas City. You still have Detroit. With both those teams have good starting pitching. Both have solid bullpens. And they're going to be tough to beat. So Cleveland, they have to get healthy and start getting back on track offensively, or else it's going to be another lost year. Like I said, last year it was a good year for them, even though they lost in the ALCS to the Yankees. But this year, with a couple of pieces gone, a big piece is gone. Andres Jimenez and of course Josh Naylor now in Arizona. Jose Ramirez and the other guys in the line are going to have to pick it up consistently.
Yeah, they really are. They want to keep track with the Tigers and the Twins. Now, going back to Seattle for a second, like I said, you said Kirby, what a great outing for him. He had 14 to salvage that series against Baltimore. He surpassed 500 strikeouts yesterday with 68 walks in 93 games started. The only other MLB player in the modern era to have 500 plus Ks and fewer than 70 walks in that span of 93 starts. He's in the Hall of Fame.
Ooh, when did this person retire? I'm not on Google, by the way, folks.
I would say like mid 2000s.
Ooh, mid 2000s.
I say mid or late 2000s. Mid to late aughts, as the kids would say.
I will say Pedro Martinez.
You're close, Greg Maddux.
Okay, good.
You were right. You were right in that same era, but Greg Maddux hit that. That span. So nice. So like I said, Kirby could be in the running for the AL Cy Young. I know Therese Skubal may say he might want to win back to back. So that's gonna be interesting to see what happens there. But nice showing by him to kind of salvage that series against Baltimore. Texas wins 2 out of 3 against the Nationals. And the Angels, the Angels are the Angels, so there's really, but they did win 2 out of 3 against the Mariners, so I can't really say anything bad about them. But it's going to be interesting to see if they can at least try to keep pace in that AL West.
Yeah, the AL West is bunched up, as you mentioned. Houston's trying to turn the corner. Texas, they need that series against a scrappy Nationals bunch. We know what Oakland is, and of course, the Angels, they play much better under Juan Washington. As we suspected, but we don't know if they have enough to get over that hump. Let's go back to the National League. The Cincinnati Reds swept the Arizona Diamondbacks. Arizona, as I don't know, we talked about this last Friday, but their free agent pitcher that they got in the offseason signed to that contract, Corbin Burns, he'll be out for the year due to Tommy John surgery. So the rest of his year is gone, and perhaps part of next year is gone for him as well. Arizona started out 26-22 before the regular to start this season. The last 17 games, 5-12.
Yuck. Yeah, and they're 7.5 back in the NL West. So Burns being out for the year, that's not good if you're Arizona, especially since he paid all that. They paid him all that money. So not good if you're the D-backs. Now, staying in that division, of course, the Giants, they're getting back on track. They swept the Braves, so, we'll see if – but like I said, we've been seeing this for the Giants every few years. You thought that maybe, they come out of nowhere, and then they fall off, and then they come back in. So it'll be just see if the Giants, can kind of keep up. They only won back of the Dodgers. The Padres, they won 2 out of 3 against Milwaukee. And, of course, speaking of the Dodgers, they lose 2 out of 3 to the Cardinals. So, but, it's definitely a logjam in the Dodgers. Although the good news is that Clayton Kershaw did get his first win of the season. So I guess you can kind of take solace in that.
Yeah, it looks like the Dodgers starting to get some guys back healthy. Their rookie outfielder Kim, their utility guy, he's really starting to hit. I mentioned about Shohei Ohtani. You mentioned about Freddie Freeman being a top candidate for NL MVP along with Mookie Betts. So we said this about the Dodgers. It's not about winning 120 games. It's not about having the best record in the National League. Just get healthy in terms of the playoffs so you can have another potential long run. Going to that San Diego Padres Milwaukee Brewers series, the San Diego Padres scored 3 runs last Saturday in their lone loss in that series. Guess how many runs they scored in total in the 2 wins? 3.
Well, like 3, like we'll say
exactly.
3. But look, as long as you win, I guess it's all that counts. You're gonna have those kind of games throughout the long baseball season. So I'm not but hey, look, Freddie Lawrence is probably happy about that, even though, like I said, they didn't have that bet. Their bats weren't there, but they won. So they 1-0 last night in the pitchers duel there. So Manny Machado's a lone home run, that was the difference there. So look, I think we'll be interested to see the Padres. Like I said, the Padres, the Dodgers, and the Giants. I mean, the Dodgers not going to run away with it, but it looks like you said, guys are starting to come back for them. So maybe that'll help them. Maybe that now with Kershaw finally get his first win in almost a year, and then the other guys starting to come back. Kim's been hitting the ball very well for them. We know Mookie's Mookie. Freddie Freeman's Freddie Freeman. So if they can get all of that going there, maybe they can get a stranglehold in that NL West.
All right, let's go over to the NL East. First of all, you listen to Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago City. LaKeena here. You're here with you talking Major League Baseball plus Cubs and Sox as well. If you have any thoughts, please go to our Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook and YouTube pages and post your comments there. LaKeena will get the up on the screen. Going to the NL East, you mentioned about the Phillies being swept by the Pittsburgh Pirates. Paul Skeens had another great performance pitching-wise yesterday for the Pittsburgh Pirates to complete that series sweep. The Atlanta Braves are a season-high 10 games of below 500 after being swept by the San Francisco Giants. The New York Mets looks like they're getting back to their winning ways. They had an all-important 3-game sweep against Colorado, against the Colorado Rockies out there in Denver. Pete Alonso, 2 home runs yesterday, and looks like he's starting to get back on track and to be that force in that lineup following Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor. LaKeena, are you buying the Mets stock right now as being one of the top 2-3 teams in the National League?
Yeah, I mean, I know it's the Rockies, just what everybody's been being the Rockies lately, so I don't think you can kind of take too much into it. But they did beat the Dodgers 2 out of 3, so yeah, you can probably say you probably could take them seriously. But again, I think it's all kind of like how they do the rest of this first half. So I know Alonso's been hitting the ball very well. I know McNeil's been hitting the ball too. So we know Lindor is going to be out for a little bit, so that could be a problem at some point. I mean, look, a broken toe. I mean that's going to be pretty. That's going to hurt for a bit for him. So, but yeah, I think let's wait till at the end of the month, and then we'll see what happens.
All right. Before we close out hour number 1, let's give you the schedule for the series that will be starting today and tomorrow and around Major League Baseball. Here's your schedule for tonight. Cincinnati will visit Cleveland in the all-important Battle of Ohio. Miami Marlins will travel to Pittsburgh to take on the Pirates. That first game can be seen on FS1 tonight at 5:40 p.m. Central Standard Time. LaKeena's Cubs will face the Philadelphia Phillies at 5:45. Tampa Bay will visit Boston. Atlanta will continue their road trip at Milwaukee. Toronto will face St. Louis. Oakland Athletics of Sacramento, as we call them on this show, they'll take on the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. The Dodgers will take on San Diego. That's a big series for both those teams in the NL West. And the Seattle Mariners, LaKeena's other favorite team, will visit the Arizona Diamondbacks. The first game can be seen tonight at 8:40 p.m. Central Standard Time on FS1 as part of their Monday night doubleheader.
We'll see if Cal Raleigh can extend his major league leading lead in home runs. Now, the rest of the schedule, the baseball schedule this week goes like this. Detroit and Baltimore, they start their series tomorrow. Excuse me. And Tampa Bay. No, we already did that already. Washington and the Mets. So we'll see if the Mets can continue their streak. The Yankees and the Royals. Now, the first game of that game will be on TBS. They're Tuesday game of the week. You got Texas and Minnesota. You got, of course, the White Sox. They start their series against Houston coming up here. You got San Francisco and Colorado. You got Oakland and the Angels, continuing their series. And then, yeah, that's about it there on that front. Now, your TV schedule, of course, MLB Network. We'll have the rubber match of that Cubs-Philly series, as well as the Blue Jays in St. Louis. Again, the rematch of the 93 World Series. And, of course, your Prime Video game of the week on Wednesday. You got the Yankees and the Royals also streaming, also simulcast on MLB Network.
All right, stay tuned for more sports and more fun as Second City Sports on Monday Extravaganza continues with Jeff Agrest, the sports medium columnist for the Chicago Sun-Times. He's going to hop on with us to talk about CHSN and what's going on sports media-wise nationally. I'm Sid, that's LaKeena. You're listening to Sports Zone Chicago.
How do you take care of your mind health?
For my mental health, I meditate in the mornings.
I have my dogs. They're the best.
I just find ways that help me just relax.
Finding things that make me happy, like being close to my family.
I meditate a lot and read books.
I have hobbies outside of the game. I'm able to switch off. I'm able to turn my brain off from the game of basketball.
Your mind health matters.
Your mind health matters.
Yeah, hello. I'm really not sure if this is what you all do, but I really don't have anywhere else to turn.
Hi. I don't even know why I'm calling right now. I'm sorry. My thoughts are going a mile a minute.
My kids are out of state. My buddies from the Army are all gone now. I'm really alone.
I left the service last year. My mom just passed away a few months ago. I miss so much time with her. I keep getting calls about the bills, and I'm trying to get a job, but I feel so stuck.
Okay, ma'am. I'm glad you called.
Okay, sir. Let's stay on the line and walk through some things.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Hey, it's your boy, the Superback, Sean Sierra, and be sure to follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms on Facebook, Instagram, and our Roku channel. You can find us at Sports Zone Chicago, and on Twitter, we are at Sports Zone Shy. Also, be sure to download our mobile app so you can take Sports Zone Chicago with you on the go.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of Second City Sports, the Monday Extravaganza edition. You're locked and loaded, and we're live in Illinois right here on Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid, that's LaKeena. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter, X, and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You can follow McGee on the Twitter, executors again, IG.
As we kick off hour number 2 with our special guest talking sports media, both locally and nationally, if you have any questions or comments for us, for our special guest, you can hit us up at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in those questions or comments in the comment section. LaKeena will get the up of the screen for you.
He's a deputy sports editor and media columnist for the Chicago Sun-Times. He's broken some various TV, local media news here in the last, pretty much the last couple of years, since he's kind of been sort of like the czar of it now, if you will. He is the one, the only, the terrific Mr. Jeff Agrest. Jeff, how are you?
Yay!
You're too kind. Sid, LaKeena, pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. How are you?
Good.
We're doing great. How about yourself?
Doing good. Doing well. Finally got the CHSN news out of the way, so we can move on from that. But I think it's still, the reverberations of it are still being felt by a lot of people who had the antenna since the launch in October, and now people with Comcast can have it. If they upgrade, if they don't have the ultimate tier, they upgrade to it. I'm happy because I have the cable down. The big TV with the cable is downstairs, so I've been having to watch it on a antenna infused small TV upstairs. So I'm looking forward to checking that out on the big screen. But it's been an interesting time in local.
Oh, darn. No, sorry, we lost you for a second. Sorry, yeah, we lost you for a second, Jeff. Go ahead, keep going.
Well, yeah. So that's we finally have that out of the way. Next is Marquee Sports Network will eventually join CHSN on that ultimate tier. It'll be where it is for the rest of this season on the popular tier, which is kind of interesting in that you have two RSNs in the same market on different tiers, but that'll change at some point. And so that's, it's over. in a sense. It's just unfortunate that people who had the antenna and were dedicated to getting the channel that way now who are in the market can no longer get it that way. It's been an interesting ride for this channel in its first 8 months.
Yeah, how did we get to this point, Jeff? We know how we got to this point. I'm sure we'll go through it step by step from the beginning up until now. But I want to jump ahead until last week because it for me, like I said, for the record, LaKeena knows this from of course. We've been talking about this along with you, Lawrence Holmes, and everybody else around town. That I am a Xfinity subscriber, so yours truly was happy last week, I should say. But at the same time, I know we'll get into this too, but there was a part of me that still wanted those games on WGN, but it looks like it's not going to happen now. But how did this surprise deal happen almost out of nowhere? Because I thought that this deal would maybe come as a surprise as the White Sox would begin their season. Obviously, it didn't happen, but this came out of nowhere last week. How did this deal reach its final summit where the news was finally announced last week?
Yeah, the timing is still very interesting. I don't quite know why it happened the day it did, or I figured we were going to go through the whole baseball season without it, because that was the pace we were on. But what the final hurdle was getting CHSN off over-the-air television. That was the number one sticking point for Comcast, was getting that free over-the-air signal accessible to everybody off the air. Now, it sounds, counterintuitive, but for Comcast's business purposes, they wanted that signal exclusively. And their whole point was, why would we pay for something? Why would we make our customers pay for something that anyone can get over the air for free? So they got rid of the Chicago OTA signal through WJYS in Hammond, Indiana, several other in the state. It'll still be available in Milwaukee. It'll be available in Indianapolis, some big markets. But locally, you will only be able to get it on cable via Comcast, via RCN Astound, via Uverse. You can still get it on streaming, DirecTV Stream, excuse me, CHSN's direct-to-consumer app. But that was the big sticking point. They didn't want to pay for something that was available for free. Now, why it happened when it did, I haven't quite gathered yet. There's been theories that, well, the upcoming NBA deal, which NBC, which is owned by Comcast, now is a part of, had something to do with it, because why, you want to promote your games on NBC and Peacock on the Bulls network channel, CHSN. But if that were the case, why do this now? Why not wait until basketball season in October to get this done? And Comcast can save the money for 4 months. So that made sense on at a base level, but when you dig a little deeper, it doesn't quite line up financially. So the timing of it was interesting. I thought maybe the news that happened the next day of Justin Ishbia becoming a potential owner for the Sox, something to do with it, but I haven't quite put that together yet either. But the bottom line is it's here, and we can all, Comcast customers, the million or so out there, can now get it. Yes. But I'm still sort of trying to figure out, when CHSN launched in October, they were promoting the fact that there were about 600,000 households in the market who only got their television via antenna. They didn't have cable, they didn't have streaming, and they were really pushing their being everything to everybody. And it sounded great, and people were unhappy about the Comcast deal if you were a Comcast customer, but if you weren't and you had this antenna, you were getting your games for free. Now, the antenna wasn't always reliable. I had my own issues here with, wind, rain, snow, whatever. It would come fuzzy. Yeah. So it wasn't reliable, but it was there. And for some people, it was great. So they're kind of out of luck right now. But again, it was part of their plan to get it over the air. They focused on the 600,000 people. Now they'll about double that with Comcast, but there is still that part of the audience that is now out of luck. And I'm trying to decipher what that means for them, what that means for the network. Have they just turned the page on that and it's over the air where it is? And if you don't have access to it over the air, you better get Comcast or its DTC service. That was a real shift in tone in going from addressing the OTA audience to now just, unfortunately, having to disband that audience.
Now, Jeff, just to let you know, I am a YouTube TV customer, so I know that that's not happening because they're not, Google's not interested in, doing any regional sports networks. But again, that's another discussion. We might discuss that later if we got time. But do you think the WGN kind of sniffing around, wanting, to probably get a piece of that? Do you think that might have accelerated some things a little bit, you think?
Well, I know they were interested. I've reported that they were interested. As far as how close it ever really got, let's be clear, WGN has always been talking since they lost the Cubs and the Sox and the Bulls and the Hawks and became, a CW sports channel essentially with NASCAR and wrestling and ACC sports. It's not the WGN that, as far as sports goes, at least that I grew up with, but they were always talking to try to get back into sports. I had always pushed for McGee to give them a package of games on Sundays. That's what New York did. That's what the Yankees and Mets did with WPIX in New York. They kept that connection to their over-the-air audience who couldn't afford cable or satellite or streaming or whatnot to get those games on over-the-air television. McGee wanted to keep its inventory, which I totally understand. My feeling has always been that McGee doesn't exist without WGN. It just doesn't happen. You have an audience you have because of my generation and generations before us who were watching the Cubs on WGN, and they gave you that audience to create a regional sports network, a new regional sports network. I don't know how Comcast would have reacted if CHSN went to them and said, listen, we're going to put these games, or even if they didn't go to Comcast, we're going to put some games on WGN. Dare us not to. Because a couple of things could have happened there. WGN could have said, okay, now that we have the sports programming, we're going to ask more via a surcharge for the over-the-air signal. And Comcast might have blacked out the games in that sense. Or WGN might not have asked for anything more than just what they would earn from advertising for airing those games on WGN. And Comcast might have also blacked them out in that sense too, because that would be circumventing their deals with other networks. So it really would have been interesting if that would have happened. WGN had talked with CHSN. There was interest by WGN, but unfortunately it never came to fruition. And now it probably won't ever happen because they're on Comcast, and that's the end of that. But that was an interesting storyline that I had hoped would go on a little further. But CHSN's goal all along was to get on Comcast and not have to do an end around, or try to at least, elsewhere.
Before we move on to the national sports media scene, Jeff, one more question from me as far as locally about CHSN. I had the chance to attend the White Sox tailgate celebrating Southpaw's 21st birthday. I ran into Brooks Boyer, who's the director of marketing for the White Sox. It was me and a few other fans from White Sox Story. We were talking to him about the deal with CHSN. Of course, he was happy about it. And of course, us as fans who have Xfinity were happy about it. But of course, we heard comments from Danny Wirtz of the Blackhawks, and I think Michael Reinsdorf of the Bulls as well. They were outraged about it as well, because both their seasons were lost due to Comcast not airing the games. I know that the Bulls had a 63% viewership drop, and the Blackhawks had 78%. What is your take about those owners speaking out about this? What do you think that had any factor contributing in getting this deal done?
I don't. They were trying to sway public opinion, because if you think about it, what was going to get the channel on Comcast? If it wasn't for getting into the OTA signal, Comcast would have had to have been pressured by fans to get that channel on its cable system. And with the way the Bulls and the Blackhawks were playing in the season that was lost, it just wasn't going to happen. Like, there wasn't going to be this outcry that there was in New York with the Yankees when Comcast threatened to pull them off the air. Then you had the FCC chairman, Brendan Carr, chiming in on Twitter saying, they better get this done. Those are the Yankees. Like, that's one of the best teams in baseball. That's maybe the best regional sports network in all of sports. So they had some leverage in the fact that the Yankees are winning. They have a diehard fan base, and they're the number one market in the country. So that never got pulled off the air. Here, with the way the Bulls and the Hawks were playing this winter, they had no leverage, and that was a real problem for the teams, and that they had nothing to hang their hat on as far as going to Comcast and saying, you got to put us on. They needed the fans to get angry, and if anything, they were apathetic about it because the teams were so bad. So they tried. Danny said what he said. Michael Reinsdorf made it political at a meeting with Crane Chicago Business, saying that he thought they were being singled out. So they tried to pull the levers that they could. I don't think any of that had to do with anything. The bottom line was getting that OTA signal off the air. And I think in the end, CHSN just had to say, okay, we're out of options. This is what we have to do to get this on Comcast. That's where the most people in the market are watching it. So we have to do what we have to do. It's unfortunate, but I think there was just a matter of what was the best business decision, and that was it.
Talking to my new buddy, Jeff Agrest from the Sun Times here on Second City Sports on Sports of Chicago, LaKeena, McGee, Sidney Brown with you. Jeff, let's go, the national sports media landscape now. Of course, NBC will have the Super Bowl coming up this season. And according to Variety, it looks like most of their ads have sold out, which is pretty early, I guess you can say, by this standards. Do you know how much money are these ads going to be going for, and what do you think NBC is trying to do? Because it's also going to be their 100th anniversary as a network, so they're going to be a very busy bunch next year, also with the Winter Olympics too.
Yes, well, they're going to. I'm trying to remember. I think they did this recently, where they had a Super Bowl during an Olympics. Maybe not recently, but they anyway. They're going to have a big day. That's for sure. They're going to have a big day of programming where they're at the Olympics in Italy, and they go to the Super Bowl, and they go back to the Olympics. Like, that's huge. The fact that they have that, and now with talk of NBC potentially getting, or at least talking about getting, Sunday Night Baseball, they can own Sunday night sports the whole year round, with the NFL in the fall and the winter, then into the NBA after football season, and then maybe MLB in the summer. So they've really hit sports hard. And if you look around the national landscape on sports media, who hasn't gotten into sports? You have these smaller networks, the CW, as you mentioned, WGN, ION has the NWSL and the WNBA. When you look at the streamers, Netflix with the NFL, Prime Video now adding NASCAR. So many of these national outlets I don't know if they need, but they want sports to gain that audience that is being fractured by having so many different platforms available to them for not sports programming, just for TV programming. Growing up, we'd watch, must-see TV on NBC on Thursday night. That doesn't exist anymore because you can go to Netflix on any night of the week and get whatever you want. So sports is huge, and NBC is really diving into that, and they will that day, LaKeena, with the Olympics and the NFL, like you say.
You brought up the NBA on NBC earlier, Jeff. I want to ask you this. I'm all for nostalgia, just like everybody else, of course. Yours truly was born in 1980. LaKeena was born in 1981. When NBC got the games back in 1990-91 season, of course, that was the first year the Bulls won the title. The NBA was in a special place at the time, getting ready to take the game global, which happened with the years followed. Now they're trying to recreate that same feel again. And I don't know if it's going to work, because I'll ask you this, because they're going to have the late, great Jim Vegas voice via AI introducing the games. And me personally, I hope they bring back the storylines like they did back in the day. How do you think this is going to work? And what do you think about some of the talent that NBC has hired over there, including Mike Tirico's going to stay as a play-by-play announcer, but Reggie Miller's over there. Of course, Michael Jordan's going to be over there. Obviously, he's not going to be in the studio breaking down games. But what is your thoughts about NBC's trying to recreate the 90s? I don't know that it's going to work, because the league was in a special place back then. You're not in that place now since the game is so global.
Yeah, I totally agree, Sidney. I totally agree. I'm a sucker for nostalgia too. I'm going to love it at first, hearing the round ball rock. I hope they do those. I'm glad you made that point about the intros. You go to YouTube and see some of those intros they used to do. They were fantastic, and no one really does that way anymore. So they'll get me. They'll tug at my heartstrings at the outset of every broadcast. I have no doubt. But then the game's going to start. And then it's going to be totally different than what it was back then. There's no recapturing that. MJ isn't walking through that door with Patrick Ewing and anybody else from those days. so that's what's going to be hard. And my biggest concern is the inventory. There's going to be a glut of games. You're going to have double headers on NBC and Peacock multiple times a week. That's a lot of games. And sometimes, are you really going to get that energy from a Spurs Pelicans game on a Tuesday night in February? I'm not so sure. As you know, if Zion and Wemby are there, that's a great matchup, but it's not going to have that feel that we felt in the 90s. We were younger, we were kids, it was exciting, it was new. This is old hat to us now. And I think we kind of see through. We're not as naive as we were back then. We see through some of this stuff. They're trying to pull at our heartstrings, and that's fine. Yeah. I'm all for it. Come at me. But again, then the games are going to start, and it's going to feel a lot of. We see so many games now. Like, think back to when we were kids. To have this access to these games where you can watch every game, everywhere, every league, minor leagues, smaller leagues. It's not as special as it can't be as special because you have such gluttony for everything. You can get all the NBA games on League Pass, NHL on ESPN Plus, MLB.TV. So you're not going to have that special NBA game on a Sunday and only on a Sunday because that's when the only national game of the week was. So I think I applaud the effort, but I think in the end, there's going to be a sameness once the games start. But Tarico's going to be great. Noah Eagle, the game production, I have no doubt, is all going to be great. But it is going to have a sense of sameness, not by anyone's fault, just from the availability of everything that we have access to.
Now let's talk about their the NBA's old sports media predecessor, their TNT and Warner Brothers. Of course, they announced earlier this morning that they're going to be splitting up into two companies. Okay, sorry for my identity crisis. I know they're going to try to fill the void with men's college hoops and wrestling. I know they just did the French Open these past couple of weeks. I know they did a good job. So, what do you think? What do you think Warner Bros. Discovery goes from here?
Well, they've dived into sports in a different way, just piecing together packages. Like the French Open, they did a great job. It's just strange. It's a foreign event that they've made their own. They've had no attachment to tennis that I can remember elsewhere until now. I mean, they had a great crew. Brian Anderson, John McEnroe was there. So, I mean, they did a fantastic job. It's just strange how they're piecemealing sports. And David Zaslav will never live down when he said a year or two ago that TNT Warner can live without the NBA. That's going to be in his epitaph because that ticked off a lot of people in the NBA, and now they don't have it anymore. I think it's great that it's funny that Inside the NBA has had this send off that they have when they're not going anywhere. They're just going to be on ESPN next year, but I get it. In the sense that it was a TNT product. It's not going to be on TNT anymore, but we'll still be able to watch it after NBA games on ESPN or before NBA games. TNT is going to be in an interesting place. They still have prime products. Like they still have the Stanley Cup Final tonight. And I think the way that they've handled hockey has been awesome. Like I think it's even been their studio programming around hockey has been better than ESPN, in my opinion. I love Biz Nasty. Liam McHugh has been great. They get Wayne Gretzky in there. It's quality stuff, and it's funny, and they all get along. Like TNT has had a historic run in assembling shoulder programming for its sports properties. Even the MLB stuff is enjoyable with Curtis Granderson and Jimmy Rollins and Lauren Shahidi. Like they figure it out better than ESPN ever has in regard to studio operations. So they still have the Stanley Cup Final. They have MLB, and that's two of the four big ones. So, you're not going to get the NFL, but at least you have those two, and you can run those for years. So I think they're in pretty good shape, but it is strange that they have such smaller, like they run from the top to the bottom. You have the new Unrivaled League, you have the French Open, you have NASCAR in there. So they're running a wide gamut of sports, but I don't quite know if it's not going to be what it was. Like you had the NBA. That's number 2 to the NFL as far as notoriety. So that's going to be a loss, and we'll see how they recover.
Last moment too with Jeff Agrest, the sports media columnist for the Chicago Sun-Times. He's hanging out here with us on Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid LaKeena hanging out here with you. Jeff, sticking with Inside the NBA, how worried are you, like many people, that since it's going to ESPN starting next year, that ESPN is going to slap him on the wrist anytime that Charles Barkley says something or something else goes right? Because let's be honest here, that crew with Ernie, Kenny, Charles, and Shaq, they were able to talk about almost any and everything. With ESPN, they were diving into politics a few years ago. It looks like, at least as of now, they stopped it. But we don't know if they're going to be on just ABC on Saturday nights, or will they be on once a week, twice a week, or what have you. And plus, they were on for an hour after all the games on Thursdays. Now, how worried are you that ESPN is going to interfere with them, and what's going to be their schedule right now? As far as their schedule, we just don't know.
Yeah, I'm not worried, and the reason is Pat McAfee. He can say just about anything he wants on that show. So why are they going to, change a show that has worked that way successfully for so long? I think they've shown. I don't want to say that they're admitting that they've had an issue in coming up with prime programming, but in licensing Pat McAfee and in licensing the Inside the NBA show, they're kind of saying, okay, we know these are great shows. They're not ours, but if we put them on our air, we can take some kind of ownership in them, in that they're on our air. They don't have editorial say over McAfee. They're not going to have it over Inside the NBA. It's going to be a TNT produced production. So given that they've given such latitude to Pat McAfee, I don't think they'll slap anybody on the wrist at Inside the NBA. They've become, now, has Pat maybe toned it down a little bit, knowing that he is on such a different platform than just being on YouTube? Like ESPN, they have standards. Not that YouTube doesn't, but you can do a lot more on YouTube than you can on ESPN without any repercussions. So maybe he's realized that and toned it down a bit. I don't see the TNT guys doing that, but I think that ESPN showing that they've given that latitude to McAfee should tell us that they'll give that same to a show that's coming in with such a track record, beloved, revered show. I don't think that Jimmy Pitaro is very good at what he does. He is widely respected, widely admired. He's not going to bring that show to his network and mess around with it. That's part of the agreement, and I think he's going to abide by that.
Last question for me, Jeff. Of course, we know TNT is going to be sub-licensing once again the college football playoff with ESPN. Of course, we're talking expansion. What's the next big sports media news to drop yet, either locally or nationally?
So the NFL, what year is it? It's maybe another couple of years. They have the option to opt out of their national television deal, with everybody in a couple of years. I think it's after I think it's in 2027. And that will be interesting. Everybody expects them to. Some believe they will. We'll be right back where we were when, which wasn't that long ago, really, when they made their big deal with all the networks again. It's going to be interesting because, like, when the NBA made its deal recently, it seemed to lower the value of the NFL deal, which was already $100 billion. But the NBA was getting, like, I think $77 billion for their deal over 11 years. So within like a couple of years, the NFL's deal lost value. So they're going to probably reopen that and get more money and maybe get new perks that they've wanted to get as far as flexibility. Maybe they'll get, like Roger Goodell has wanted, every team, they'll have 16 international games and make that its own television package. Like, can you dilute the schedule anymore? They have all these ways to have flexible scheduling, but if you keep having standalone games, you're limiting the flexibility you can have in your schedule. Like, that's why you've seen so little of it the last couple of years, is because every game, it seems, has its own place on a product, on a platform schedule. If you have all these Thursday night games, Sunday night games, the occasional extra Monday night game, and then you're adding in an exclusive international package for Sunday mornings. You can't just move a game from London on Sunday morning to Monday night. So I'm interested in how they go about messaging that, because again, you're just diluting your product. But again, it's the NFL; they can do what they want, it seems. So that's, I think, the next big television contract story is: will the NFL opt out in the next couple of years? They likely will. And what will that next deal look like? How will it be different from this one? Because again, remember, they're looking to get an 18th game in there also. So now you can push the Super Bowl another week back, maybe to President's Day if the math on the calendar does that well. But you're looking at getting another week of the NFL and maybe another package of games for international. So they're going to have more. That's what they need, is more inventory to have flexible scheduling with. And that 18th game would do that.
Yeah, I think you're correct, Jeff. I think that 18th schedule is 18th game. The schedule is coming sooner rather than later, and that's the case. Like you said, that TV contracts is going to be huge. Jeff, thank you very much in advance for joining us today here on Second City Sports. Great job. We both enjoy your work. We see you and hear you on other platforms throughout the city. And don't be a stranger. Please come back on our show when you have some more breaking news. We would love to have you on again.
A real pleasure. Thank you both so much. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
All right, thank you
Jeff.
much. Continued success.
Take care.
All right. You too.
All right. Of course, that was Sun-Times columnist Jeff Agrest here on Second City Sports. On Sports Social Chicago, we'll definitely have him on, because I'm sure there's going to be a whole lot of media stuff coming up at some point. Now, of course, we're going to take a really quick break. Of course, we'll talk about the finals, both the NBA and the Stanley Cup Final. And we'll also have, a special edition of Old School TV Monday, even some NFL news, too, because a couple of veteran defensive players might be on the market. Maybe one of them could go join the Bears. Maybe not. I know Sid wants one of them, but we'll talk about that coming up next. LaKeena McGee, City Found, Second City Sports on Sports of Chicago. Our Sports Potpourri 7 coming up right after this.
Potpourri.
Hey, it's your boy, the Superback, Sean Sierra, and be sure to follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms, on Facebook, Instagram, and our Roku channel. You can find us at Sports Zone Chicago, and on Twitter, we are at Sports Zone Shy. Also, be sure to download our mobile app so you can take Sports Zone Chicago with you on the go.
Time out. How are you feeling right now? Happy? Excited? Angry? Overwhelmed? One of the best things you can do for your mind health is to name what you're feeling. It can sharpen your awareness and help you talk about your feelings with someone you trust. Here are 3 questions to ask yourself. Where are your thoughts right now? In the past, the present, the future? Do you notice any sensations in your body? Is your heart beating fast? Is there a flutter in your stomach? Or are you fully relaxed? What do you need right now? Time with others? Time to yourself? Remember, there's power in this awareness. So find ways to identify what you're feeling today.
At a time when the news seems as subjective as the partisan politics dividing this country, independent professional journalism has become a resource people need to get the honest and accurate information for their lives. That's why I created JQuinnReports.com. As a born and raised Chicagoan, I know this city better than anyone. So my investigative stories are all original, and they'll go deeper to expose the truth by using information obtained from public information databases and in-depth interviews with the movers and shakers. My future stories will introduce you to people and businesses who are changing the world, not just Chicago. My missing person stories will spotlight those who you don't hear about in the mainstream media, who are often overlooked. If you want to hear my personal views on things around the world, check out my blog site, which is based off of factual information on my life experiences. There's also past episodes of my weekly sports podcast show, What's Up Cuz, that I host with my real-life cousin, Lance Urban. So if you're looking for all this information and more, check out jcoinreports.com and follow me on Twitter at jcoy.
Every day, we take steps to keep the people we love safe, but some health risks are easy to miss. Ticks hiding in the yard can spread germs, like the ones that cause Lyme disease. Mice searching for food can spread bacteria that makes us sick. Mosquitoes lay eggs in standing water and can spread West Nile virus and more. Cockroaches are drawn to water in the home, leaving behind allergens that can trigger asthma attacks. Common pests can threaten our health. Learn how to protect your family at pestworld.org.
Dancing to my own music. Welcome back to Second City Sports, the Monday extravaganza edition. You're locked and loaded, and we're live and live in color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid. That's LaKeena. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter, X, and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You can follow my kid McGee on the Twitter, X, again, IG.
This is our sports potpourri segment. If you have any questions or comments on any subject that we have talked about up to this point throughout our show, including our interview with the great Jeff Agrest of the Chicago Sun-Times, you can definitely hit us up at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in those questions or comments in the comment section. LaKeena will get them up on the screen for you as we go into last night's Game 2 of the 2025 NBA Finals.
It was basically all OKC, if you will, and I guess everybody's really surprised by that. OKC, 123-107. The team split the series as it goes to Indianapolis coming up on on Wednesday, and SGA did his thing. He had 34 points. Jalen Williams had 19. Holmgren had 15, but it was they got contributions from guys off the bench. Brendan Carlson had 20 points, which is a career high for him, and Aaron Wiggins had 18. So it was, like I said, it was basically all Thunder all the time yesterday, and that's why I didn't really bother watching this game.
Well, I had the chance to watch the majority of it because nothing else was on TV at the time. I didn't feel like turning to Sunday Night Baseball, but I digress. But Indiana had a better start to Game 2, unlike the other night, as we talked about last Friday on the show. Pascal Siakam of the Pacers said that they were nervous and it showed in Game 1 in that first half. Of course, they turned it around in that second half. But last night, the Pacers did keep up with the Thunder. But as we talked about on our preview during our show last Friday, Chet Holmgren must play better. He did. He had 9 first quarter points, as you mentioned, 16 for the game. Jalen Williams, he didn't have to wait until the fourth quarter to get it going. He got it going early, too. So both those guys were aggressive, helping out Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And I said, too, on our last episode last week, following Game 1, that the Oklahoma City Thunder must pass the ball around. They had 13 assists total as a team in Game 1. Last night, they had a total of 25 assists. Now, they still had the same amount of turnovers as they did in Game 1 with 14, but they upped the assist total by 12 last night to 25 in the comparisons to Game 1. Also, the Thunder dominated in the rebounding department overall. They had a +8 advantage at 43-35, but offensive rebounds, 11-7. Defensive rebounds, 32-28.
Yeah, 3-point range was, I don't know if you mentioned it as I was trying to track my laptop here, but 3-point range was really an issue for the Pacers. 14 of 40, that's not going to get a lot done, especially in the NBA Finals game. I mean, all 5 stars were in double figures. It's just that they just couldn't hit any threes. And I think that's really going to be a thing here. And I guess they're going to have to look. They depend on the three a lot. The Pacers doing. You know how I feel about that. So they really need to get it going here on Wednesday for Game 3, because it's going to be a pivotal. Because if you're the Pacers, you got to try to win Game 3. Because if you don't, the series could be over with pretty quick. So if I were where Carl, I would say try to at least be aggressive, like you said, with not only with the 3, but I will say with the rebounding as well. Only, like you said, 28 defensive rebounds only to 32. So that's not going to do it for you. You gotta, if you're Siakam, you gotta be a little more aggressive. If you're Halliburton, you want to be a little bit more aggressive too. You only had 17 points, but like I said, he was 7 for 13 from the field, 3 for 8 for 3-point range. So their stars got to get it going here, and so it'll be interesting to see what the Pacers do and how they respond as the series goes to Indy.
Speaking of Tyrese Halliburton, you notice I brought up his name in the intro to our show. He had a noticeable limp living off the press from after last night's loss, and whatever that injury is, I know they have an extra day because of the travel between games 2 and 3. Uh, between games 2 and 3, which game, as you mentioned, will be in Indianapolis for Wednesday and Friday coming up. If Halliburton's injury, whatever it is worse than what we thought in any way, the Pacers are in trouble. We talked about him last Friday on the show, hitting that game winner, which was great. He's hit a game winner in at least one game of the previous 3 rounds at game 1 here in the NBA Finals. But wherever injury he has, if it's any worse, I think the Pacers are in trouble. But still, regardless, they're going to have to get contributions from Shepard, Nembhard, and Naismith. And some of those guys had to step up as well. Now, Miles Turner, he didn't have a great game 1. He had a decent game 2 last night. Pascal Siakam struggled here a bit. He only had 15 points, 3 of 11 shooting overall. He's going to have a big game for the Pacers. We talked about the rebounding. They got to step it up with the points in the paint as well. Plus 8 advantage last night for the Thunder.
All right, of course. So, and of course, you can watch Game 3 of that NBA Finals series coming up Wednesday. Of course, it's on ABC. So we also want to send our best wishes to Lisa Salters, the sideline reporter. Mm-hmm. She's going to be off for both. She was off for the last night's game. She's off for Game 3 as well because her mother's having health issues. So, thinking about her, keeping her, and of course, her partner, Stephanie White, of course, who coaches the Indiana Fever, former Purdue star. And we're thinking about them as they go through this difficult time. So our thoughts go out to Lisa and her family during this tough time.
Yes.
All right. So Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final commences tonight. But of course, Brad Marchand's game winner helped the Panthers even their series against the Edmonton Oilers. He had multiple go-ahead goals, including a shorthanded goal, an overtime goal, and 7 shots on goal. Since they started tracking those back in 1960, only one other NHL player has done all of that in a single game, either regular or postseason. Real quick, who do you think it was? He's a Hall of Famer.
I would say Wayne Gretzky.
Close. You're close. You're in that era, but you're getting warmer.
Mark Messier.
Getting warmer. He's Canadian.
Ooh.
I'll give you one more guess.
Okay. It's not Messier. It's not Gretzky. I know I'm gonna make a hard left turn. Gordie Howe.
No, a little bit further. A little bit. I would say recent, but a little bit recent than that.
I got one more guess. Here's my last guess. Mario Lemieux.
Yep, you got it. Mario Lemieux did it in 1988, 1996. Yep.
Yes.
So,
and no, folks, I'm not on Google. I do not need a cheat machine.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. Very nice. Well, look, he was gonna get there eventually, I think. Yeah, once you got Mess and Gretzky out the way. But it was all Brad Marchand. But it was definitely back and forth. You thought that maybe Edmonton was gonna take a 2-0 lead, but then Panthers said So also Marchand, of course, had a big thing to do with that. So I think for Game 3 coming up tonight, I think that place is gonna be rocking down there in Florida, and I think this is going to be interesting to see, which team, because remember, Florida is 35-15-2 at home this year. So, that's going to be really going to be a thing here. But, Edmonton's 29-19-2 in road games. So, that's going to be kind of like the thing here. Reinhardt, Bennett, the 2 Stances, I call them on that team, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, I think either one of those guys got to step up here because, also I think the defense is really going to have to step up too because it really hasn't been much in the game the first couple of games. But I think the more consistency about it because you don't want to play another overtime, I guess. So try to win these games in regulation. I think if you're either one of these teams.
We thought that Game 2 we were going to get a standout goalie on his head performance. Obviously, we didn't get that. I think fatigue will start to set in for both these teams tonight, and I think it's going to be a much tighter game, a much low-scoring game, given the fact, like you said, they played back-to-back games to start off the Stanley Cup Final. It really got physical on Friday, LaKeena, as we talk about all the time. When it gets physical, can't turn the puck over. You got to dig into the corners, dump and chase, and create traffic in front of the net. It was a lot. With that, sometimes you get a whole lot of penalties, and it was penalties on both sides last Friday. 16 penalty minutes for Florida, 12 penalty minutes for Edmonton. Edmonton was 1 for 6 on the power play, while the Florida Panthers were 1 for 4. As we say in hockey all the time, you don't want to give teams free chances to get an advantage of you. So, but even though both teams score one power play goal a piece, you don't want those penalty minutes start racking up. And the longer this series goes, on top of the 2 overtime games you played already, it's going to be bad. So I expect a tight checkered game tonight, and I think we're probably finally going to get a goal again, a 3-2, 2-1 game, because like you said, with those back-to-back overtime games being played already, fatigue is starting to set in, and you definitely do not want to do anything stupid, turn the poke, go have a bad turnover, or have a bad penalty to cost your team the game.
Yeah, especially with Marchand with that short-handed goal. So you don't want to. Hopefully that doesn't become a thing here. So yeah, so I think we're due for one of those goalie games. So hopefully maybe hopefully we'll see that, because I like you said, I'm sure these guys don't want to have to play another overtime game, because you got to think, if fatigue is setting in, you kind of saw that, especially since Friday's game with the double overtime. So you hope that maybe we can get you can get one of these goalies to have have the stand on your head performance, because we get one like every Stanley Cup final. So you got to think who's going to be the goalie that does that for one of these teams. Yeah, and in the hits department last Friday, Edmonton got out hit by the Florida Panthers 39-60. Florida had 60 hits. So in hockey, as I said all the time, when things get physical, you take more chances. A whole lot more penalty minutes stack up, and there's a whole lot more chances with the extra man advantage. So I think both these teams will be careful tonight with that extra day because of the travel. Now with the series shifting to the Sunshine State, so I think you're going to get a clean game tonight, and hopefully which goalie will stand on his head, and we'll see what happens. I think I will take the Florida Panthers at home, since they'll be energized. They'll be energized, and they have the momentum of what happened the other night. They weren't supposed to win that game, but Brandon Marchand had other ideas. So I think Florida clearly has the momentum being home for the next 2 games. So I'm taking Florida tonight for game 3. So Bobrovsky had 42 saves. Skinner had 37. So yeah, we'll see. Maybe like I said, maybe he can. Bobrovsky can use that the entry for the Emorant Ice Arena can get it going there. So we'll see what happens. Now the schedule for this week, you've got, of course, game 3 is tonight. Of course, down there in Florida, I should say. It'll be on TNT, True TV, and also streaming on Max. And of course, it'll be game 4 will be, if I could get this, if my computer will cooperate. It'll be Thursday on TNT, True TV, and also streaming on Max.
All right, you're listening to Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid, LaKeena here with you. Let's dive into some tennis talk for a couple minutes, LaKeena. I actually watched some of this live. Congratulations to Coco Gauff being the women's champion of the French Open. It was a great final. Everybody and their mama sent out their best tweets in their congratulations to her. I saw some of that, and I saw mostly the highlights here on YouTube. As we talked about before, she is no disrespect when I say this. She is that chick when it comes to American women's tennis. Madison Keys is my girl, but I always have respect for Coco Gauff. Still do now. That was a great final last Saturday morning / early afternoon, and she continues to rack up those major title wins. I'm not saying she's going to come for Venus and Serena anytime soon, but if she keeps this up, she's going to be in that class with Venus and Serena Williams when her career is all said and done.
Yeah,
get to say that 5 times fast.
The tongue twister there, but yeah,
yes.
Just a great final. She's actually down a set in the break in set 2, and she came back and won that set, pulled away from there, and Sabalenka, of course, 70 unforced errors. You're not going to win tennis. I don't care, tennis expert or not. You're not going to win a lot of matches. And she had 30 of those in that first set, which she did end up winning the tiebreak. But it was all Coco kind of got it going after that. If you saw her parents, Candy and Corey out there, Corey was all the way up at the top of course, who's on line.
Yeah, I'm in the front row.
He's always all the way at the top, so trying to see what's going on here. But yeah, I mean, look, she's only 21. She just turned 21 in March, and this is her second Grand Slam. She becomes the first American woman to win the French Open. Yeah, go right back to Serena. She did it 10 years ago. And look, I think she's definitely shown that. Look, she won the French Open Juniors a few years ago. She actually has a connection to a guy that won again. We'll talk about him in a minute here. But yeah, Coco, I think, has shown that. Look, she's got the game, she's got the attitude, she's got the fortitude. She's been very upfront in the last couple of years. It's been mentally, but she didn't think she could do it. But she's able to pull through and will herself. And look, I think you gotta give her props for that. And I think she's gonna be one of the favorites going to the Wimbledon later this month.
Yes, she should. And as I said before, she continues to collect these wins in these major events. So she's going to be up there with the Venus and Serena when it's all said and done. I think she's very marketable. All types of people from all different types of backgrounds can relate to her. And I think the sky's the limit for her. And like you said, with Wimbledon coming up next month, she should be the favorite. And it doesn't mean she's going to does that mean it's a guaranteed win for her? No, because you're always going to have people coming after you when you have the number one spot. But I think she's ready for the challenge, and she did it with this challenge at the French Open. The Wimbledon is higher stakes, and she'll be ready. She'll be ready.
All right, now her good friend, and who also won in the juniors in 18. Now he's won his 5th Grand Slam. Won Mr. Carlos Alcaraz. He beat Yannick Sinner in a 5-set classic yesterday. I know Sid didn't see it because he was on his way to G-Ray, but it's the second longest men's major final by time. We got all the way back to 2012. But the Aussie Open final between Djokovic and Nadal. Of course, Djokovic ended up winning that one in a 5-setter. And this gives Mr. Alcaraz his 5th Grand Slam title. He's the 3rd youngest man to win 5 majors in the Open era. And he was actually 0-8 in majors when dropping the first 2 sets. Sinner won the first 2. He had 39 straight had a 39 straight match win streak. Talk about Sinner did after winning the first 2 sets. He saved 3 match points. Becomes his 3rd man to do that. When the major title after saving at least 3, and I think including 1 championship point. Of course, it was 10-2 in the tie. Of course, they go to 10 on the men's side in the last set in the French Open. But just a really great tournament for him. And look, I mean, like I said, he and Goko are good friends. They go back a long ways, and he's actually already well ahead of Nadal, because remember, Nadal, he didn't win Wimbledon until I think like 3 or 4 years in. So in fact, he already has a Wimbledon title. But yeah, I think he's Alcaraz. He's definitely he and Sinner definitely has his rivalry there, the next big rivalry in men's tennis.
And that's something that men's tennis needs right now. And as I always say, and hopefully this will be on the rise as well. Who's that next American star in male tennis? We talked about the female star in tennis earlier, Madison Keys, of course, Coco Gauff leading the charge. So who's going to lead the charge for the American men?
I mean, there have been guys that have been close. We know Tiafoe, he made all the way to the corners. Sadly, unfortunately he lost. He's been close a few times. Jack Draper's been close a few times. Of course, Connor Shelton's been very solid. Ben Shelton, I should say, he had a good French Open, made it all the way to the round of 16. So yeah, I think you gotta think at some point American men will win another major. No one's done that in years. But but with Ray Alcaraz and Sinner have been going, they may be the new generation, Rafa, Federer, and Novak. I know Novak wants to try to win. Of course, Sinner beat him in the semis, but yeah, I know he wants to try to win at least one more time before he retires. So even if it kills him, hopefully not literally, but yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's gonna be interesting though on the men's side. But yeah, I think the future of men's and women's tennis is looking really good.
Yep. And we'll see what happens with that sport going forward. As we mentioned, the next major event is Wimbledon. It'll take place late June, early July, around the 4th of July holiday weekend, of course, here in America. Even though we know the tournament takes place in London, but the time frame is late June, early July.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was trying to say. You're listening to Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid, LaKeena here with you, coming up a special anniversary edition of Old School TV Monday. But in the meantime, in between time, LaKeena also has breaking news from the NFL, and it may involve our Chicago Bears. Tell us about it, young lady.
Well, yeah, Jair Alexander, of course, and what some would say is sort of a stunning move, depending on how you look at it. He was released by the Packers earlier this morning, and apparently, this according to Jordan Schultz from, of course, the great reporter from Fox Sports. He says that the Packers and the Bills did have talks over the offseason to perhaps maybe a trade. They weren't able to finalize anything. So now, of course, he was owed a lot of money. That's why he was let go. Now I'll be interested to see if the Bills try again to perhaps maybe get him to the fold. Or look, I mean, if they got the money, maybe the 49ers, they may, they need another quarterback. Who else probably needs it? I mean, Baltimore can always use another one, and especially with the rumors that maybe Jalen Ramsey might be on his way out from Miami. So yeah, so we're just see what happens with that. But things get a little bit interesting down there for Mr. Alexander, the five-time Pro Bowler. My bad.
And with Buffalo Bills in a win now mode, they'd be the first ones to acquire his services if they had the cap money to do it. I know they have Joey Bosa over there now. I know Von Miller retired finally, and I know they're going to be the subject on Hard Knocks. But remember, LaKeena, I told you throughout the offseason, through the draft, excuse me, based off of what happened in the last year's AFC title game, the Buffalo Bills needed help in secondary. If Shire Alexander doesn't answer the call, as far as that big move for Buffalo to improve his secondary, I don't know what does.
I mean, like I said, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of contending teams going to need his services, perhaps. So, like I said, maybe the 49ers, maybe the Rams, maybe if they can't get Ramsey back, maybe the Chargers. They could always use a extra secondary guy. Houston. I mean, look, we know their defense has been, the secondary has been probably the one weakness from that defense. So, could be interesting to see what happens with that. Now, another defensive guy that's going to be on the market right now. From the Bengals. Now, the Bengals, we know with the problems with Trey Henderson, but Jermaine Pratt, who's their longtime starting linebacker, he was released. He'll be released on Tuesday. Of course, that's when the money and stuff, doesn't change hands here. And he's only 29. He was entering the final year of a 3-year contract that he signed. And, of course, the Bengals will have to incur a 2.3, I should say, cap hit with Pratt's release. He actually led the league in tackles last year. And like I said, I mean, I know the Bears, look, they need somebody, maybe perhaps should beef up that front seven. Could Pratt be the guy that kind of fills that void?
I would take a flyer with him. I know the Bears are pretty happy with their linebacking core, but you always need depth, and still the question remains, since the Bears and GM Ryan Post did not answer it via the draft. I know they picked up, I forget his name for the moment, for the Indianapolis Colts prior to the draft to play opposite Montez Sweat, but you need guys in depth on that defensive line, and we still haven't found the answer to the question who's going to play opposite of Montez Sweat. If you take a flyer on this guy, I don't think it's going to, as you say, it's not going to cost that much for the Bears to get him. So maybe you take your chance with him to see what happens, because the Bears need bodies. And the way that Ben Johnson's trying to introduce his program to his new players already on both sides of the ball, all systems are go for Chicago. So I would take a chance on him and see what happens. You're not going to have to break the bank from him per se.
No. So yeah, he's gonna have a lot of steers. Like I said, he was in the top 10 in tackles last season. So could be very interesting to see what happens. But it should be interesting there. Now, Nick Chubb, of course, there were some rumors that maybe the Bears could probably take a flyer on Mr. Chubb, the veteran running back. Not so fast. That's kind of to spoil it. But yeah, he is going to sign, depending on physical. But yeah, he is going to sign with the Texans, helping out C.J. Stroud in that offense. So I mean, look, when he's healthy, and it's been a thing here, when he's healthy, Chubb's one of the best running backs in the league. So I'm sure it's not going to be a lot of money. I think it's only be like a couple of million with a lot of incentives. And so, and that's fine, because like I said, he's coming off an injury. So you don't want to break the bank for him. But yeah, it should be interesting. Could add a lot of depth to that running back tandem there.
Yeah, he's going to definitely help out C.J. Stroud and help out that Texas offensive line whenever they have a lead or they need to secure a secure the ball and secure a possession when it gets close to the game. He can get those tougher yards for you. It's definitely going to take pressure off of C.J. Stroud and the rest of those guys on the Houston Texas offense. The problem with Houston is they got to have guys stay healthy. I know Stephon Diggs has been with the Patriots now. Tate Dell went out last year with another big injury, but you have Tate Dell back there and Nico Collins. I know he was nicked up last year, no pun intended. But when you have those guys out there and you have Nick Chubb addition to that running back room, Houston could be a dangerous team once again this year. So a great signing by the Texans.
Yeah, indeed. And of course, the Colts, of course, with the untimely death of Jim Irsay, have finalized the transition to his daughters. Let me get this here. His oldest daughter, Carly Irsay Gordon, will assume the role of the owner and CEO and has been designated principal owner. Her two younger sisters are going to have other places in the organization as well. So this is probably a smart move. Now, Carly's already, like we said last week after he passed away, Carly's already been the foremost. So this might have been the plan anyway. So it'll be just to see, it'll be just to see what happens here with the Colts. I know that the family is really close with the players and the coaching staff. So we'll see what happens this season for them.
All right. You're listening to Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago City. LaKeena here with you. Coming up, Old School TV Monday, the special anniversary edition. LaKeena, I know you say you didn't watch the whole Game 2 last night of the NBA Finals, but many people, including yours truly, have been complaining about no Finals logo on the floor. No, remember, they had a championship trophy at center court behind the team's logos. Well, they kind of got back to that last night, but via virtual. I know, of course, if you watch any hockey telecasts, they have those virtual advertisements on the boards and on the glass. And the NBA did it last night, having the YouTube TV and NBA Finals logo on both sides of the opposite sides of the floor. They had the trophies on there in the first half. Instead of doing it on the cheap route, just have them painted on there for real.
That's all you gotta do. That's all you gotta do. I mean, you don't have to. Like I say, you just paint on. You don't have to plaster them on and such. So yeah, it was kind of boring, and like we talked about with Jeff earlier, it was just not a good look for them, and it's just unfortunate that I know we want nostalgia and stuff like that, but yeah, where are the intros? Where was that great finals intro with all the past finals and stuff like that, like they did back in the early years? Maybe once NBC kind of does their coverage, maybe they'll get ESPN to kind of wise up here, but don't cheapen out on the production of the NBA Finals. I know these are not the two of the best, the largest markets, but even still, you still got to make a little bit of a spectacle of it. Come on now.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things that we didn't have time to address with Jeff, we'll bring him back on this program down the line. But if you notice, not just locally, LaKeena, but mostly nationally and mostly with ESPN, the halftime analysis is getting shorter because of the amount of people you have on the desk. Of course, for ESPN, you have Malika Andrews hosting, Stephen A. Smith, Bob Myers, who I like personally. He gives it to Stephen A. Smith whenever he deserves it. Of course, you have Big Perk, Kendra Perkins. But last night turned to a sort of a shouting match, and I got annoyed, so I just muted it and turned it. I like Perk personally, but you're not inside the NBA. You're not, and this ain't first take or first fake, I like to call it. I get it. You could disagree. I'm all for a good disagreement as long as you don't make it personal, but to turn into Mike and the Mad Dog or the Monsters of the Midway, if you grew up here in Chicago back in the day on 820 to score, I don't need everything to be a damn shouting match. That's just me. You can be passionate without yelling back and forth like you a bunch of Isaac Guillen wannabes. The
guys from Awful Announce said the same thing. Like that just wasn't. And look, we don't need that to be like a first take kind of thing. So it got annoying. I know, and I heard that. Yeah, Perk's so easily triggered, unfortunately, and so no. I think
that's another statement, but it's facts.
Yeah. So and hopefully, I'm glad that they're gonna have a bigger, inside the NBA will have a bigger part of that next year because we don't need that. Because that was just terrible. But that was probably the only fight that we saw last night in the NBA Finals.
As we mentioned, that best of 7 series is tied up at one game apiece. Game 3 will be Wednesday night at 7:30 Chicago time on ABC. Game 4 will be Friday at 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time on ABC. Both games 3 and 4 will take place in Indianapolis. Going back to sports media, Bill Plaschke announced that he has Parkinson's disease. We wish him the best here on Second City Sports and Sports Zone Chicago. He was one of my favorites for years on Rhino Horn. That's how I got to know him, not on a personal level, but as a fan. And naturally, I still read some of his stuff from LATimes.com. I hear him on the radio on both stations in Los Angeles. And I know he's from Louisville, Kentucky originally, but he's been a fixture in LA sports writing since 1988. And it really puzzled me when I read the news yesterday on my way home for the Sox game. And he's really one of the best voices, not just in LA sports, but in national sports as well. He really has a great opinions. He's a great storyteller. We wish him the best on this battle with Parkinson's disease.
Yeah, it's a horrible. Parkinson's disease is a horrible disease. So when I read that news, I was just shocked and just stunned by it. And yeah, he was definitely a fish on Rhino Horn. I think he's like the second. He had the second most wins on there. Well, after Woody Page. So wish him nothing but the best because this is a terrible disease. But yeah, you got this. You can. Like I said, you can fight this disease, Plashke. So we know you're a little bit stubborn. So yeah, you got So so you're gonna give this a what for? So you got this, Bill.
Yeah. We definitely wish him the best of health and the best of luck. Staying with the NBA, LaKeena, no shocker here. Jay Wright currently with the CBS Sports with college basketball's coverage. He said, "Hell no!" and coach the New York Knicks. As we told you on this show, why would you ruin your golden years of your life to go coach an NBA team for 2 years? If you don't meet expectations, you'll be out of there in a heartbeat. Jay Wright made the best decision for him, not just for himself, but for his family as well.
Water's wet. That's what I said. Like, I mean, come on. He wasn't. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why Greeny and others, felt that. Oh, well, he might. No. This is not college hoops, and I'll talk about why that is in a second here. But yeah, he wasn't gonna do it, and I'm sure if he want, because I remember someone posted a video that if you remember years ago, Mike Krzyzewski actually was there was a rumor that maybe he might go to Boston back in 1990. So, I remember that rumor. And of course, he ended up not going. Of course, he ended up winning multiple championships.
What about the Lakers after Kobe Shaq broke up? He was like,
yeah.
No.
Yeah. So, so not a big shock there. Maybe 15 years ago, maybe he probably would have done it, talk about Coach Wright. But yeah, he's not doing that. He's having a great time doing, he's good at doing college hoops. You can tell he's 62 years old. He actually looks younger now than he did when he was coaching. So doesn't have to worry about the stress anymore. So especially now with we'll talk about it in a little bit here, but that's just it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, and of course back to baseball. All the programming on MLB Network is up by significant percentage points with MLB Central. Intentional talk. Hopefully we can get Sierra Santos on this show at some point. I met her at a White Sox game a couple of years ago. She does a great job with Kevin Millar and Ryan Dempster. Of course, their national pregame show, MLB Tonight, the national pregame show, which is on, I believe, at 4 o'clock Chicago time. I got a chance to watch it almost in full last week, being off from the 9 to 5 gig. Their ratings are also is up as well. MLB Now has some not ratings issues, but their percentage points in terms of ratings jumped up as well. Brian Kenny, he does a great job with that. It's a thinking man's baseball fans show. And so MLB Network right now is looking solid in numbers. I know Rob Parker of Fox Sports Radio, not to make it personal, but I know he's a baseball guy. He says, as we talk about all the time, baseball in particular and hockey are regional sports, but it seems to be, especially with this year, a whole lot more people care about it than they have in years past. I think one of the major factors is, you get to stream the games online and also too attending the games, the pitch clock to attract those younger fans. As we said before, LaKeena, once people get used to it, you ain't gonna hear too many complaints about the pitch clock. It seems to be working. I hope it doesn't go. I don't think it's gonna go anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, I don't think it will, and I think games are quicker now, and I think and I think one of the Nationals games, Twins Nationals games, they were like an hour and like under 2 hours, like an hour and 49 minutes. Yeah. So, and I think, look, people want that, of course, those games against the Rangers, the first game where that was actually the only game that Nationals won against the Rangers. It was only like an hour and 49 minutes. That wasn't even 2 hours. So
that's has, Mark Burley type starts.
Yeah. I'll say, yeah. So, I think people want, quicker games and such. And look, they can have exciting games and whatnot. And I think the average has been like just under 3 hours, under like 2:45 for games this year on MLB. So I think it has worked. So that's one of the reasons why. So yeah, I think it's definitely gonna yeah, I think this if you're baseball, I think you like that part of that.
Yeah, and hopefully they can market their stars better. It's been a problem with that sport for years, along with the NHL and their goofy commissioner Gary Beavis Batman, RP Les Grobstein for that name. But so we'll see what happens with MLB as the season goes on with terms of ratings and actual games. All right, LaKeena, it's time to wrap up the show. As you listen to Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago, this is the time of the program every Monday that we like to salute old school TV program, both sports and non-sports. But we decided to stick to sports for this week. 15 years ago tonight, Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final between the Philadelphia Flyers and the Chicago Blackhawks from 2010. Of course, the Blackhawks won that game in overtime, courtesy of Patrick Kane's overtime winner. Of course, that 2010 Blackhawks team was the first Blackhawks team to win the Stanley Cup in 49 years. The last time that franchise won at that time was 1961. Of course, you had Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews, who's trying to make a comeback. Good luck to him on that. Of course, you had big buff Dustin Byfuglien. You had Corey Crawford, but he was in their minor league system back then. He would take over as the starting goalie then next year. Yeah, Cristobal Huey, Antti Niemi, who was a rookie then. He took the job on the last half of that season and rolled through the playoffs. Brian Campbell was on that team. He was the last guy to touch the puck before Patrick Kane in Game 6. Yeah, Andrew Ladd, Patrick Sharp, Christopher Stieg, and others. That team was so fun to watch, LaKeena, after being swept out of the Western Conference Finals the year before against Detroit. Of course, they came back to win the Stanley Cup title the next year. Of course, we know about what happened against Nashville in the first round. Marion Hossa with the game winner in Game 5. Of course, that was the first year he was with the team. It was the biggest free agent signing in Blackhawks history, perhaps in Chicago sports history. Of course, you know what they did against Vancouver in that second round. They swept San Jose in the Stanley Cup Western Conference Final, of course. They beat Philadelphia in a tough but competitive, high-scoring 6-game series. Of course, Game 6 was a classic. Philadelphia tied the game up late, and of course, in overtime, Patrick Kane with the game winner. I don't think they still found that puck to this day. Still got to look for it.
Yeah, they have. Yeah, they still. I tweeted. I posted earlier. Yeah, they still haven't found that puck. So, Hardno tied it with about just under 4 minutes left, and of course, Kaner came in about just a little over 4 minutes into that overtime. And like I said, they still haven't found it. And I know Talkheimer, who was calling the game for NBC, I know it still hurts him to this day. Even though he did get a couple of chances to call a couple more Blackhawks Stanley Cup wins, but that one there still haunts him. So, but yeah, I mean, look, breaking a kind of a drought, if you will. Well, I won't say curse, but a drought, because it was been a long time since the Hawks won a cup. But yeah, those teams, other stuff aside, I think those are probably one of the better teams and such. And I think, look, everyone contributed on that team, and those teams, I think, are going to be remembered to this day. And Hossa had a good series there with the Flyers. Don't forget Ben Eager. He was there too.
Yeah, the game winner in Game 2. Yeah.
Yep. John Madden. So
no, not the football guy. The one from New Jersey.
yeah, not that. Yeah, I'll say wow. But yeah, Brian Stupi. You forgot Stupi Campbell.
I mentioned him.
Oh, you did? Okay, sorry.
Yeah, man, I said he was the last one to touch the puck before Kane scored that game winner.
Yeah, scored a game winner. Yep, he sure did. And of course, John Merson, of course, he was big in that series as well. So yeah, I think definitely contributions from everybody in that on that team. Probably one of the you don't want to pick who are the best championship teams, but I think that one you never get your first. I think since most of those guys were there for all three of them, I think this is probably the best overall team. I think among those three.
And let's not forget Duncan Keith and Brent Seabrook, the top defensemen on that team as well. Both of them had tremendous series in that 2010 Stanley Cup Final. You can find both versions of the full Game 6 of the Flyers Blackhawks Game 6 right here on YouTube. The NBC version with Doc Emmer. He still did a great job given the circumstances at the time. And of course, Jim Huser from CBC's Hockey Night and Cannot Believe That. That version of the full Game 6 is also available on YouTube as well. So we'd like to pay tribute to the 2010 Chicago Blackhawks. 15 years ago tonight, they will win their first of 3 Stanley Cups in the 2010s.
All right. Well, now, real quick, congrats to Texas on winning their first ever women's softball title. This is what they're their fourth time in the final series. They finally came through and won it. Mia Scott, of course, who is the infielder for Texas. She had 5 hits, 4 runs, two home runs, and 5 RBIs, all on a torn ACL.
Yeah.
And
so congratulations to her. Oh, speaking of towards ACL, real quick, best wishes to Amanda Vandersloot. I know she tore her ACL unfortunately on Saturday for the Chicago Sky. I know they lost the game, but they lost her for the year. And hopefully she'll be back healthy and better next year. I know she broke the scoring record for the Sky just about 2 weeks ago, and then this happens to her. That just stinks. But we wish her the best, and she'll be back and better next year.
Yeah, it was a non-contact injury too. If you saw it, so just a terrible injury news for her. Just when she was actually one of the few Sky players that actually consistently, had a good season so far. So yeah, that's a big loss for them. And of course, you got the men's baseball. About 6 teams I think have made it to the College World Series over there in Omaha for the baseball side. I know there's a couple of games tonight. You can catch those on the ESPN's family of networks. So you guys can check that out as well coming up. And I believe the Sky's next game is tomorrow against the defending champ, the reigning champ Liberty on ESPN. So hopefully they don't get their butts kicked too much during that game. So I think there's one team on the baseball side. That's Murray State, the Cinderella team, Murray State, and Duke. That's going to be for the last spot in the Men's College World Series coming up in Omaha later this week. So make sure you guys check that out if you're a fan of that. So Sid, take us home.
All right, you can follow yours truly, Sidney Brown, on the Twitter, X, and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You can follow LaKeena McGee on the Twitter, X, and IG.
Be sure to download that Sports Zone Chicago app wherever you get your apps. Please follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms. Please subscribe to our podcast. We're located at War Media Podcast. That's WARR Media, PODCASTS. We are on all podcast platforms, including the iHeartRadio app. And while you're at it, please give War Media a follow at WARR Media on all social media platforms. And thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
Be sure to catch Second City Sports live in the living color every Monday, every Friday from 12:15 to 2:15 p.m. Central Standard Time, right here on Sports Zone Chicago. One more again, as the kids would say. Be sure to catch Second City Sports live in the living color every Monday, every Friday from 12:15 to 2:15 p.m. Central Standard Time, right here on Sports Zone Chicago.
And of course, we want to thank our new friend Jeff Agrest from the Chicago Sun-Times for his great insight on the sports media news and happenings and stuff like that, and both locally and nationally. I'm sure there's going to be more. We'll definitely have him on. I'm sure there's going to be more shoes to drop on both local and national side. We're definitely going to have him on sometime later this year.
Yep. And don't forget to catch all our other shows that are airing on Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook and YouTube pages like Sean Sierra Sports, What's Up Cubs, The Smoke Fellas, and a whole lot more coming down the pipeline. So don't forget to subscribe to our Facebook and YouTube pages at Sports Zone Chicago.
All right, folks, enjoy all the baseball, the NBA Finals, the Stanley Cup Final, college baseball, WNBA, and so much more. A great time of year for to kind of keep you guys occupied until football starts. So for Sid, I'm LaKeena with Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago, and we'll see you guys on Friday.
Go Sox! Holla!